32-year-old man named Omid worked in a plastic injection workshop that seemed to change at night. The cold and silent walls, which were lifeless during the day, came alive at night with strange noises from the machines. Omid, who had to work night shifts to pay off his debts, entered the workshop every night with trepidation. On the first night, as the workday ended and his colleagues left one by one, Omid began to hear sounds, the echo of footsteps in the silence of the night, but there was no one around. He decided to ignore these sounds and continue his work. On the second night, Omid noticed shadows sliding around the corners of the workshop, shadows with an indistinct shape that moved with him. He promised himself it was just his mind playing tricks. On the third night, Omid encountered a creature he couldn't believe, a being with red eyes and sharp teeth that emerged from the darkness. Omid screamed, but his voice was lost among the roaring machines. On the fourth night, Omid returned to the workshop with more fear than ever. He had decided to tell his employer about the events of the night, hoping he would believe him. With a trembling voice, Omid recounted all the strange and terrifying occurrences of the past nights to his boss. But instead of sympathy, his boss responded with mocking laughter, dismissing them as mere figments of Omid's tired imagination. Feeling more isolated than before, Omid continued his work. But this night, something happened that he would never forget. As he approached the injection machine, it suddenly stopped, and a heavy silence fell over the workshop. Omid looked around and saw the shadows moving again, but this time, they took on the form of human figures emerging from the walls. Suddenly, a sound was heard, as if coming from the depths of the earth. Omid turned towards the noise and saw a creature with red eyes and sharp teeth standing and staring at him. Omid screamed and ran towards the exit, but the door was closed. He looked for another way out, but wherever he went, the terrifying creature followed. On that dark and terrifying night, Omid saw an open window high up in the workshop. He decided to jump through it to escape the nightmare. With all his might, he ran towards the window and leapt out. But the height was too great, and as he hit the ground, everything went dark, and he lost consciousness. When he opened his eyes, sunlight was filtering through dirty windows. He was in an old house, a place that seemed untouched for years. Omid lifted his head and saw an old man with a weary face and wise eyes sitting across from him. The old man spoke with a calm and firm voice. "My son, what has happened to you? I found you last night, half dead and unconscious, in front of the plastic injection workshop." Omid, still in shock from the previous night's events, tried to respond, but no sound came out. The old man moved closer and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Do not fear, my son. You are safe here. But you must know, the workshop where you work has been abandoned for years. No one dares to go near it, for it is said that the spirits of the past wander there." Omid, now looking at the old man in astonishment, realized that this was just the beginning of his adventures, and that they might never end. Determined to resolve the haunting mystery, Omid once again approached his employer and recounted the chilling events. This time, his employer believed him and revealed that he knew a team of paranormal experts. He promised to contact them and request their assistance at the plastic injection workshop. The following night, the team arrived, equipped with their knowledge and tools to delve into the supernatural. After thorough research and investigation, they discovered a grim truth. Many years ago, 5 individuals had been murdered at that very site. Their restless spirits had been wandering the premises, trapped in a limbo of their unresolved demise. The experts informed the employer that they were prepared to conduct a ritual to release the souls from their earthly bonds. With the employer's consent, they commenced the ceremony. For 2 intense hours, they chanted and performed their sacred rites until finally, the air felt lighter, the shadows receded, and a serene calm filled the workshop. The team turned to the employer and declared that the place was no longer under any spectral occupation. They assured him that he and his employees could now continue their work without fear of any ghostly interference. Overwhelmed with relief and gratitude, the employer and Omid thanked the team profusely. From that night on, the workshop was just a workshop, and the eerie occurrences became nothing more than a memory, a story to be told. And so, Omid's nights became peaceful once more, and the spirits found their long-awaited rest. Ali, a 25-year-old man working in a 24-hour pharmacy, was left alone on the night shift. It was past 3 a.m., and no more patients were coming in to buy medicine. The pharmacy had fallen into silence, with only the sound of raindrops hitting the windows and a vague, distant noise from the storeroom with its door ajar. Ali felt a piercing, heavy gaze from the darkness of the storeroom. Every few moments, the streetlight shining through the window would cast shadows on the walls that seemed to move. Unable to bear this unsettling feeling any longer, Ali approached the storeroom. He reached for the light switch, and with one flick, a cold, white light engulfed the room. But there was nothing out of the ordinary, just shelves filled with medicine boxes and empty bottles left in a corner. Ali took a deep breath and laughed at himself for being foolish enough to be scared of shadows. But as he turned around, something in the corner of his eye glinted. Something that wasn't there before. A small mirror reflecting the light of the street lamps. Ali, startled and terrified by the sight of the mirror, tried once again to ignore the incident. He walked back to his chair, sat down, and unlocked his phone to distract himself. As he lowered his head and focused on the screen, several medicine boxes fell from the shelves to the ground. The sight deeply frightened Ali, and he could no longer control the trembling of his hands or the pounding of his heart. He quickly lifted his head and scanned the room. There was no one in the pharmacy, just him and the silence, now broken only by the ticking of the wall clock. Ali approached the shelves to pick up the fallen boxes, but as he bent down to grab one, something moved in the background of his vision. He spun around, yet again. Nothing was there. He took a deep breath and told himself it was all in his head. But at that moment, a sound came from the storeroom. It was like a moan, soft and continuous. With his heart racing, Ali moved towards the sound. The storeroom light was still on, but it seemed dimmer now. As he looked inside, something glimmered in the faint, semi-darkness. Ali looked intently towards the end of the storeroom and saw a terrifying creature with a mysterious smile watching him. His heart pounded fiercely in his chest, and as he tried to flee, he realized that the doors of the pharmacy were locked and wouldn't open. Overcome with terror and feeling his life might be at an end, he turned around only to see the creature close by, and with the shock, he fainted. Hours later, when he regained consciousness, he saw the doctor, his colleagues, and some people by his side in the pharmacy, helping him to stand. Ali, with a confused and anxious look, began to recount the incident to everyone, and after finishing his story, he resigned from his job at the pharmacy with a trembling voice. Days and nights passed, and Ali could never forget that dreadful night. He decided to move to another city and start a new life, but every night, in his dreams, dark shadows crept towards him from the corners of the room, and the sound of that mysterious creature's laughter still rang in his ears. On a cold and dark night, Robert stepped into an old abandoned building for the first time, now his new workplace. It was nearing midnight, and the only sound in the silence of the night was the beating of his own heart. He had been hired as a night watchman, but no one had told him why no one else was willing to work in this place. Robert turned the ancient keys in the lock, and the door opened with a sound that seemed to attract all the creatures of the night. The air inside the building was even colder than outside. He turned on his flashlight and headed towards the guard room. Each step he took, the old wooden floorboards creaked beneath his feet. Suddenly a sound came from the upper floor, a sound like the shifting of a heavy object. Robert paused, took a deep breath, and reminded himself that this was just an empty building. But the sounds continued, and this time it seemed as if heavy breaths were suspended in the air. He moved towards the stairs, gripping his flashlight tightly. With each step he ascended, the sounds became clearer. When he reached the upper floor, everything went silent. Robert glanced into the empty rooms, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. He decided to return to the guard room and write a report of these events. But when he reached the guard room, something caught his attention. An old journal on the desk, its pages filled with scribbles in shaky, illegible handwriting. Robert closed the mysterious journal with trembling hands and moved towards the sound. With each step closer to that room, the feeling of fear and curiosity within him grew. When he reached the door of the room, he took a deep breath and opened it with all the courage he had. In the dark room, something shone in the corner. Robert approached the light with his flashlight and saw that it was an old mirror. But the reflection it cast was not what he expected to see. In the mirror, there was a horned creature with a mysterious and terrifying human-like face. Robert was petrified. He tried to scream, but fear had taken his voice away. With all his might, Robert turned to flee. He ran towards the exit and out of the cursed and abandoned building. Outside, the air was cold and dark, and Robert had no means of transportation. He was forced to run all the way through the area where the abandoned place was located. After some time, he reached his own home. He then hastily called his boss and told him about the night's events, and then told his boss that he could no longer work there.